All right. Hello, everyone. So, my name is Sandra Baker, and thank you so much for being here with us today as we talk about the physiology of grief. So, what is grief? We often use the term grief to describe the emotional processes that we go through when experiencing the loss of a loved one. Merriam-Webster Dictionary says that grief is a deep and poignant distress caused by or as if by bereavement, or a cause of such sufferings. The term grief may also be used to describe an irritating, bothersome, or unfortunate happening. Think, good grief, Charlie Brown. There are different types of grief. This here was my poor little parakeet Abby, and I definitely experienced grief when she passed. There are a few different types of grief, such as anticipatory grief. And this is a grief that we experience when we know the loss of someone is near. This can happen when someone has dementia and we can see them slowly losing bits of themselves. This can also happen when someone that we love is on hospice care and we know that they're going to die really soon. There's also common grief, which is what most of us are probably familiar with. I'm sure you've heard of the 5 stages of grief: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. Now, we still have all of the emotional responses to grief, but over time the loss is accepted. And though the love that that loved one gave us is always felt, and that loss is always felt, it's something that gets a little bit less heavy over time. Then we get into stages of complicated grief, and these are things like inhibited grief, where someone may show little to no signs of grief. There's also delayed grief, where someone might take a really, really long time before they start actually experiencing grief for the loss of a loved one. There's also chronic grief, where someone experiences grief for a very extended period of time, and that doesn't get any lighter for them. The burden stays just as heavy. And there's also distorted grief, where someone shows extreme or exaggerated signs of grief behavior, doing things like stopping eating or hysterically screaming and crying on a consistent basis. People can really, really have some tough emotions. Now, what does this do to us on a physiological level? So, the biggest impact that grief has on us is stress. Our bodies react to changes in our environments with stress. The sympathetic adrenomedullary region, hypothalamus pituitary adrenal region, and our central nervous systems in general are stimulated by stress. As a result, epinephrine and norepinephrine are released, leading to cardiovascular response. This means that grief has the power to put us into fight or flight. When the increased stress, parasympathetic systems decrease in function. Those experiencing grief are more likely to experience heart rate variabilities, increased blood pressure, dysregulation of the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, and have increased cortisol levels. All of this imbalance inhibits our body's ability to function at its highest capacity. Additionally, grief has a tendency to turn our worlds upside down. We don't eat as well, we don't sleep as well, we forget to exercise, all of our self-care goes out the window. Plus, the chronic secretion of cortisol during grief impairs the body's ability to kill pathogens. All of these combined factors lead to a reduced immunity during periods of grief. What are some treatment options that we have? There's naltrexone. Now, this is primarily used in opioid addiction to block dopamine receptors, which inhibits the release of dopamine. Dopamine is released when we experience positive social interactions with those we love and build positive relationships as well. By using naltrexone, we inhibit dopamine production during social interactions, thereby reducing those positive feelings. And though this may seem counterintuitive, reducing the dependence that a grieving person has on social interactions may make the loss of their loved one feel a little bit less heavy. This treatment may also be beneficial to anyone who's struggling with drug dependency during the grieving process. We also have selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. Now, SSRIs increase our levels of serotonin by blocking reuptake. This means that as opposed to being reabsorbed, more serotonin is available for our bodies to use. This is commonly used to treat depression, and symptoms of depression can be very similar to symptoms of grief as well. This means that SRIs can be a great option for those experiencing chronic grief. How else can we reduce these physiological impacts? We can avoid drinking alcohol, smoking, or using recreational drugs. Make sure that we're drinking plenty of water. Maintain a healthy diet. Exercise. Get some fresh air when possible. Try and get 8 hours of sleep every night. Wash our hands frequently. Take our vitamins and get support when we need it. We all need a shoulder to cry on sometimes, so don't be afraid to seek solace with others. Never underestimate the power of a hug from a good friend. And to the right here, I have some photos from a very, very good friend of mine's memorial service. We all wore these big red lips because she loved the big red lip look, and it felt really special. So support can really be healing during times of grief. Thank you all so much, and please be well.